That song is really kind of encapsulates a prayer for me for this, even this time together, this message. I hope you heard the lines where it said, I will look up, for there is none above you. I will bow down to tell you that I need you. Jesus, Lord of all, Jesus, Lord of all. I will look back and see that you were faithful. I will look ahead, believing that you are able. What were the actions of me? What were the actions of you? It was simply looking back and watching God. It was simply looking forward and trusting God. And notice that God was in the picture both times. So many times we don't allow God to be in that picture. So today we're going to talk about the chase. But first, a little history. In Pamplona, Spain, there's a festival that happens every year. You might have heard of it. It's called the Running of the Bulls. Anybody familiar with the Running of the Bulls? Okay, good. But I'll tell you a little bit about it just in case you don't. People dressed in white with a red scarf around their neck. I'm not quite sure why they wear different bright colors, because bulls are colorblind, but hey, we're humans and we like to do whatever we want. But these people are called nozos, more like bozos, but you get the picture. They line up in this narrow cobblestone street, and they literally pack themselves in. And this is something that takes place every year, and it's this huge event that takes place in Pamplona, Spain. From July 6th through July 14th, so 9 days where this takes place. And every morning, a rocket will go off, and all of a sudden, all of these people will just take off running. Why? Because in 10 seconds, a second rocket will go off, and between 6 and 12 bulls will be released from the cages and chase after the people. Here's kind of where I would be. It doesn't make much sense, but I spared you all of the graphic pictures of the guys being thrown in the air and everything, which, if you want a good laugh, Google that on YouTube. It's pretty funny. But I don't know about you, but I don't like to be chased. I don't like it when cars are behind me. I don't like it. I speed up to get away from it. I can't stand it. I don't want creditors chasing me. I don't want, the only time I want someone behind me is when I'm running a 5K. Because that means I'm beating somebody. So I'm happy when somebody's behind me. But that's it. But today I want to talk to you about the great chase. It's a chase that affects every single one of us in the room today. It affects every single one of us. It's a chase that tries to hold you back in your life. It tries to hold your life in check. It's a chase that takes place to hold you back and not allow you to live the life that God intended for you to live. Last week, I told you about Moses and how Moses found himself in a place where he was at a burning bush. And God spoke to him through this burning bush, and God began to tell him, I want you to go back to Egypt. I want you to go back to that place where you murdered a man and you buried him in the sand. I want you to go back to that place where you don't want to go. But I want you to go back because I want you to lead my people. I want you to set them free. And so after a long debate, Moses finally goes back to Egypt, and he goes back and he gathers up all of the Israelite leaders, and he tells them about what had just happened. He goes back and he tells them about how God had spoken to him through a burning bush, and how God had taken Moses' even staff and told him to throw it down, and he turned it into a snake, and God told him to pick it up, and as soon as he touched the snake, it turned back into his staff, and he performed that miracle to try to convince Moses that he was able to do what he wanted Moses to do. And so Moses is telling him this, and so he gathers up the Israelite leaders and tells them to stop what you're doing, come with me, because we're going to Pharaoh now, and we're going to tell him. So they go, and they get an audience with the Pharaoh, and they stand before Pharaoh. And Moses says, God demands that you let the Israelite people go, that you release them from the slavery that they are under, and that you just let them go. And Pharaoh kind of just stops. And he says, God, I am God. Who are you talking about? Because I didn't say that, and I'm God. That was literally what they believed. And then looking out over the crowd, seeing that the Israelites were among the people, Pharaoh says, who gave you a break? Who told you you could stop doing what you were supposed to be doing? You see, their job was to make bricks so that they could build the empire of the Pharaoh. But since you're deciding to take a break, and I didn't give you a break, and you have enough time to obviously come up with this crazy idea that you're supposed to go free, here's what I'm going to do. I'm no longer going to provide the materials for you. You see, I had been providing all of the straw and all the materials for you to make the bricks, but no more. Now you have to gather all the materials, make all the bricks on your own. And here's the thing, I'm not changing the quota. Every day you have to still make the same amount of bricks and gather all the materials yourself. Now get to work. It's about that time the Israelite people look at Moses and say, thanks a lot. Epic fail on your part there. Thanks. I thought God spoke to you and told you that this is what was supposed to happen. Now imagine for a minute that you're a 7-year-old child. And your mom and dad are making bricks. Your job is to go out and to gather up the materials. And you take them back to your parents to make the bricks. But every day, almost on the dot, you hear the chariots coming. At 6 p.m., the chariots come rolling in, and they have their whips with them ready. Because they're going to check on every single family and see, did you make the right amount of bricks? And if you didn't, you were going to get beaten. Now imagine you're that 7-year-old child, and you have to watch your mom and your dad be beaten every day that they're short. You have to watch as they stumble in the house, as they wear the marks of the people that they were forced to become. This was the life of an Israelite for 430 years. That was their life. But God kept saying, I will set my people free. God kept saying, I hear your cries. I hear you calling out. I see the pain that you're going through, and I am with you. I am for you. I will set you free. So God sends 10 plagues, When we read about these 10 plagues, we read about the frogs and the locusts and the bloody water and the darkness, and we think that they're kind of random plagues. But really, if you study Egyptian culture, what you realize and what you find out is that each one of these plagues actually targets an Egyptian god. And God is actually attacking each god of the Egyptians, saying with the message, I am stronger. I am stronger. So the 10th plague comes, and the Israelites, and the 10th plague comes, and the Egyptians tell the Israelites to go. Don't just go. Here, take my silver and my gold. Just get. We're tired of all of this coming against us because of your God. So here, take all our treasures and go. And so as they're embarking on their journey, they begin to celebrate and rejoice because they're free. But word gets back to Pharaoh that the Israelites are actually leaving. He didn't think they would. And this is what he says. Pharaoh says, what have we done? Have we let the Israelites go and have lost their services? So he had his chariot made ready, and he took his army with him. He took 600 of his best chariots, along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. So a chariot, what would a chariot be like? A chariot would look something similar to this. You would have two people in the chariot, which was pulled by two horses. One person in the chariot would be driving the chariot, would be controlling the horses, but the one on the back would be either throwing spears or shooting arrows. The second one was the one doing the battle. And so they were armed. And it says that Pharaoh took his 600 best chariots. But Pharaoh meant business this time. So he didn't just take his 600 best. He brought the JV team with him. Those slackers that are probably going to miss 90% of their targets. He's going to take his chances. He's taking them with him. He wants the Israelites back because he wants his kingdom to be built. So the Israelite people, they're carrying all of their belongings on foot. They're carrying everything that they had, their possessions and everything, and they're carrying it into the desert. And they begin to think to themselves, we're free. We finally become free. But as they look back, they see the dust storm start to roll up behind them. They begin to hear the war cries of the Egyptians coming up behind them. Exodus 14:10-12 says this, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone and let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. It would have been easier for us just to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. In that moment, they are terrified. They become controlled by their fears. And you see, that's what fear is. That's what fear is. Fear is the chase to pull you back and put you in your place. Fear is the chase to pull you back and to put you in your place. You see, the Israelites were slaves for 430 years. And now they had tasted freedom. But Pharaoh said, oh, no, no, no. I'm going to come after you. I'm going to chase you. And I'm going to pull you back and show you where you belong. That's as a slave. You see, every day fear chases you. Every day fear chases you. And I don't know what fear that is. I don't know what the chariots are a metaphor for you. But fear wants you to believe that you can go nowhere else but right here. That this is the place where you have to stay because you can't go there. You can't. You're not good enough. You'll never be able to achieve that. You can't step out. You'll get in trouble. You'll fail. You won't succeed. You can't leave this place in your life. And that's what fear does anytime you want to push out the boundaries. Anytime you go to change something in your life, fear says, no, this is where you stay. Think about that. Isn't that true? Is that true in your life? I bet there's times in your life where it's been true. Where God has called you to do something, but the moment it comes to do it, all of a sudden you're nervous, you're scared. Is this the right decision I made? Should I have waited? Should I not have waited? Should I? All these questions come rolling through your mind and you're scared. I'll just give you an example. I believe God called me into ministry. It came down to it where I was 3 years into my master's of divinity at Asbury, and they said, oh, whoops, we forgot to tell you, we want you to move there for a year. I didn't want to move there for a year. I felt called to ministry in this area. And so I said, God, did you call me to ministry? If you did, then I need you to provide a way. About 3 months later, I found out that Wesley Seminary was going to start at Indiana Wesleyan. So I sat out a year and I transferred there. I was reading gas meters full time. My boss was a Christian. He knew what I was doing, so he allowed me to work 4 days instead of 5 so that I could go to seminary on Tuesdays. About 3 months in, boss comes back and says, I'm sorry, this is over my head, but we're not going to allow any more part-time people, so you either have to work 5 days, quit seminary, or quit here. I go, okay, I'm done. He's like, I knew that was going to be your answer, and, more power to you. The trouble was I had to go tell Jennifer that I just quit. That was not a fun conversation to have. So I substitute taught in some schools for a semester. A guy that I was mentoring at the time just happened to know the pastor here and knew that he was leaving, so I applied. I talked to the DS, and I came and we met with the pastor parish committee, and we sat down, and this is what I'd wanted. I'd been waiting for this for 7 years. We sat down, we talked with them, and then Jennifer and I go out in the hallway, and then all of a sudden, bam, fear just hit me in the face. What in the world am I doing? I don't have a clue what I'm doing. It doesn't help that Jennifer says, you don't even know if you're going to be good at this. And it's like, shh, be quiet. You're not helping me at all. And so, the DS comes out and says, so what do you think? And I'm like, we're going for it. I'm like, I'm not giving myself a chance to back out of this. And then the next day I wake up and what in the world am I doing? And fear just takes over. But when you get past that moment, I had given messages, I had preached sermons before, and every single time I preached a message, I was ridiculously nervous. I mean, I would like break out in sweat, turn red, like before, I could not sing the song before I had to preach because it was like, okay, what's all my notes say? And, I'm going to forget something. And I've never been nervous here. Even my first message, I've never been nervous here. And that's how I know that this is where God wanted me. But you see, the thing is, if I would have listened to fear, if I would have allowed fear to pull me back, God would have never been able to do the things in my life that he wanted to do. Where has fear pulled you back? So Moses sees that the people are afraid. But this is what he says. Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. If you will only be still. Moses says, do not be afraid. Stand firm. Trust in God. Trust that he will do the things he said he will do. Look back and see where God is faithful. Look forward, trusting he will be there. Don't allow yourself to be pulled back. Fun story. There was a 4 or 5-year-old boy, a friend was telling me this story. He was at a hotel, and there was a pool, and he's kind of sitting, doing some work by the pool, and all of a sudden, here comes this little 4 or 5-year-old boy, and he's got his arm floaties on his arm, and he's got his goggles on that are too small, and he's he kind of scrunched up face, and he's heading for the diving board. But Daddy's with him. And Daddy walks up beside him, puts him on the diving board, and, he's cheering his boy, oh, come on, you can do it, you can do it. He's just cheering him on, giving all of the courage he can just to let him know that it's okay, you can do this. All of a sudden, the boy kind of looks off to the side and says, Daddy, why do they call it a dying board? It's like, no, son, it's a diving board. You jump off of it into the water. And so seeing that he was kind of discouraged and unsure about it, the dad jumps in the water and he gets right in front of the board and says, jump to me. You can do it. And he just begins to cheer him on and say, you can do it. You can do it. The boy just musters all he can. He just runs down the board, jumps, sticks out his foot, kicks his dad in the face, gives him a bloody nose. But he has a cool dad, and the dad just starts splashing, jumping up and down. You did it, you did it. Puts him back up. The boy runs down the board, kicks him in the face again. And as my friend is telling me this story, I realize something. It's faith. That's what faith is. You see, faith propels you into the arms of the Father. Faith propels you into the arms of the Father. You see, fear will always pull you back into your old broken self. But faith is going to propel you into the arms of your Father. Faith is going to propel you forward into the arms of your Father. So Moses is telling the Israelites, have faith and stand firm. But let's rewind that story a little bit with the little boy. He's coming out and he's approaching the diving board. You see, he actually has 2 choices. The first choice he has to decide about, will he trust his father to catch him even when he kicks him in the face? Will he trust his father to catch him? But he also has another choice. He can get down. he can get down off the board because it's too dangerous. He can believe the lies of the chariots. And he can choose to allow safety to pull him back and put him in his place where God never intended for him to be. Or he can choose faith. Every day, you have the choice. Every day, you have the choice to either let fear win or to be propelled into the arms of the Father. It's your choice. Will you choose fear or faith? So Moses places his staff in the water. And the water becomes like walls on both sides. And it begins to be dry ground. And the Israelites begin to walk through the Dead Sea on dry ground. And as they're going, they begin to look back and they see that the Egyptians are getting closer and closer to them. And again, they begin to have this fear well up inside of them. We're doomed. It's over with. We're going to be slaves again. And about that time, Moses pulls up his staff from the water, and the walls of water come crashing down on top of the Egyptians. And the Israelite people are now watching their oppressors be washed away. They're now watching the Israelite oppressors, the people that had enslaved them for so long and had shaped them and formed their life to be something that they were not created to be. And as the Israelites stand on the other side, having trusted God, having propelled themselves into the Father's arms, they can only do one thing: and sing. You see, Exodus 15 is actually one of the very first recorded songs. Very first recorded worship song, if you will. The chariots of fear are thrown into the sea, and the Lord's people are set free. And they begin to just tell of how faithful God is. And they begin to look back on themselves, and probably in shame, and see how little they really did trust God, but yet see how faithful God was to them. See, God's going to fight for you. He's going to fight for you. You see, this is the story of the Exodus. Slaves being set free. You see, Exodus means to depart or to leave. You see, the Exodus was actually a foreshadowing of the gospel. You see, the New Testament writers understood Jesus to be the leader of a new Exodus. Of a new Exodus. You see, sin entered the world. And there was no way that sin was going to leave the world. There was no way that God was going to be able to have the relationship with his creation that he wanted to have. So it says he sent his son into the world to be like one of us, to become like us. In a few short weeks, we'll celebrate Easter, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You see a beautiful picture of a chase that came to an end. You see, the only way that our chase ever ends is when we put our faith in Jesus Christ. Is when we trust him to do the things that he says he will do and to be who he says he is. And you see, the Exodus is a perfect picture of baptism. Is a perfect picture of baptism. You see, their shame and their brokenness are all being washed away as they stand on the other side. A picture of resurrection. You see, on the Egyptian side of the Dead Sea, they were still slaves. They were broken people. They were controlled by fear. But as they crossed the Dead Sea and as they stand on the banks and watching their oppressors be washed away, they find themselves experiencing resurrection, a new life, being set free, God giving them new purpose, God showing them their true purpose in life. I'm excited. I love baptism. I love doing baptisms because of it's such a beautiful thing. Being baptized and going into the water, one person, and symbolizing as you come up out of the water that Christ has made you new through the washing away of your sin, through the forgiveness of your sin. Here's the thing. It's easy for us to say, well, I need to be baptized because I want to go to heaven. Doesn't say that anywhere. It's not a ticket. Baptism's not a ticket. Baptism's a symbol. Baptism's an expression of my faith, of what God has done inside of me. Is it important? I think so. Because baptism is kind of like a going public party. You're telling everyone that, hey, I'm not just going to talk about it anymore. I'm not just going to talk about being a follower of Christ, but I want people to know I'm serious about it. I want people to know that I'm taking my faith seriously. Here's the thing. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. Well, to a degree, but if you're able to comprehend anything I'm saying right now, you are young enough to get baptized. Do you like how I put that? You're all young enough to be baptized. And we're going to do it a fun way. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to do. It's going to be fun to experience. And just to help you out, I've already got one volunteer, and I won't call her out, but she's sitting up here. But don't let fear say, I don't get it. I'm unsure. Talk to me about it. Because this is the last thing Satan wants you to do. Satan wants to pull you back and say, you don't need to do that. You don't need to tell people about your faith. You don't need to take your faith seriously. Or you can jump off the board and propel yourself into the arms of the Father. My prayer is that we just have a fun party in a couple weeks. Well, actually, I wish we'd have a party every week. Because that's what this is for. That's what worship is. It should be a party. It should be a celebration of what God has done in our life through the week. And I know we have to be good United Methodists, and we can't raise our hands, and we can't, we got to be quiet. But come on, people. Could we please act like we know Jesus Christ died for our sins? I'm pretty sure that if you won the lottery, you're going to be sharing it with somebody. Not the money, but the fact that you won. I hope you share it with the church, but just don't tell me you won it through the lottery. that might be a whole gambling issue, but if you guys share your faith, tell me about it. Because sometimes it gets kind of lonesome. Kind of teaching and saying, this is what God is telling us to do. God is calling us to reach out to people. And then I don't hear anything. And it's like, I don't want to do this on my own. I don't like to do things by myself because it's lonely. But I want to celebrate with you guys. I want you to share your stories with me. I made some comment one time. I don't know if you remember Stephen Newhall. I was in a meeting with him one time, and we were talking. I was doing a series on serving our neighbor, and I made some comment that if we were going into a board meeting and a board member was late because they stopped to help someone alongside of the road, that I would literally get up and do a dance when they, told me that. And so he freely shared all that information with everyone. And I want to celebrate. Because don't keep it to yourself. Don't hide it. Because that's what we're supposed to do. Because guess what? When I hear someone else is doing something, when I hear that someone else is now serving someone that, they're getting out of their comfort zone, guess who is likely to also get out of my comfort zone and do something else because someone else did it? The people around us. Because let's face it, we don't like to be the first person to do anything. Because that's the scary part. But when you share your stories and you share your faith, God begins to do crazy things in your lives and in the church. And I don't mean a bad crazy. I mean, people may think we're crazy, but that's great because we should be crazy about Jesus Christ. I don't want to be the only crazy one that does this. I need to get crazier, to be honest with you. So the question, will you allow fear to pull you back and put you in your place? Or will you allow faith to propel you forward into the arms of the Father?